The film takes place during the reign of Empress Catherine the Great. 1780 year. Captain of the imperial yacht Fyodor Ushakov asks the commander-in-chief Prince Grigory Potemkin directions to the Black Sea Fleet under construction. For this he is ready to give up the prospect of a court career. 1783 year. With a small detachment of sailors and craftsmen, Ushakov arrives in Kherson to shipyards. At this time, on the southern borders of Russia, the epidemic of plague rages. Among the workers' riots riot Tikhon Prokofiev, nicknamed the Ragged Ear, the fugitive serf from the estate Ushakov and the ally of Pugachev. At the instigation of the English spy Orfano encourages the people to go to the Don. Ushakov with sailors stops the rebels. Organizes the extinguishing of shipyards. Set on fire by the same spy. Personal example convinces the chief local doctor Ermolaev to stay. Attracts to his side Tikhon. Introduces a strict quarantine regime and conquers the plague. Son of the doctor Ermolaev, Viktor asks Ushakov to enroll him on the ship. But he refuses, but only because the ships are not yet. 1784 year. Simultaneously with the construction of the fleet, crews of ships begin training. During training firing, Ushakov distracted arrived courier, Captain Senyavin. Between him and Ushakov immediately there is dislike. Meanwhile, Senyavin wanted to report that Potemkin himself had arrived at the ceremony of launching the ships. The head of the newly created Black Sea Admiralty Board, the liberal and supporter of the British Naval School, Count Mordovtsev, also informs Potemkin about the violations allowed by Ushakov, the training of officers not according to statutes, unorthodox tactical ideas. Despite Ushakov's inappropriate behavior, Potemkin favored him, the potential of a talented naval commander. During the launching ceremony of the St. Pavel battleship, Viktor Ermolaev, despite protests from his mother, breaks into the ship. To Orfano in the meantime comes the messenger. The spy finds Tikhon and reminds him that he can still betray him. 1786 year. During the first training voyage, Ushakov theoretically studies his ideas in the field of tactics of sea battles. While surprising officers by putting his forces into losing conditions, guided by the principle, "You want victory, believe that the enemy is 3 times stronger. 4 times." 1787 year. Catherine II travels to Crimea. Potemkin is working on a scenario of events on this matter. Ushakov tells him that he can only boast of the increased training of personnel. Potemkin, despite external outrage, decides to surprise the Empress and the ambassadors of European powers not with pomposity but with might. During the meeting of the Empress, Potemkin first complains about the lack of strength. The actions of Turkish pirates using English and French weapons. The ambassadors of Great Britain and France ignore the statements. But then Potemkin demonstrates to the assembled squadron of the Black Sea Fleet in the Sevastopol raid. At the signal, Ushakov's ships begin to show firing. However, Ushakov, forgetting himself, cries out, "Well done, Vasiliev! Stapa St. Paul! All for a glass of vodka." Quote. Despite this, the Empress produces the commander of the squadron of Count Voinovich in the rear admirals, and Ushakov in brigadiers. London. The British government is concerned about the appearance of the Russian fleet on the Black Sea. Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger took an anti-Russian stance, in his own way understanding his father's will that Britain should not have competitors at sea. Exit Pitt finds in the declaration of Russia of war, but not by Britain, but by Turkey. The Turkish Sultan orders the Russian ambassador to be imprisoned in the Semibashan castle and to declare war on Russia. In the Crimea, The liaison officer informs Orfano about the beginning of the war. Simultaneously with the Turkish landing, the uprising of the Crimean Tatars, prepared by the British, should begin. The most urgent task of Orfano is to get rid of Ushakov. He requires Tikhon Prokofiev to kill Ushakov. However, he attacks the spy and beats him, but is forced to retire because of the newly appeared sailors. Orfano informs the Count Mordovtsev that Ushakov hides a runaway convict. Mordovtsev is on the ball, which gives Potemkin in order to report it. Potemkin, meanwhile, is discussing with Ushakov his ideas. Mordovtsev is going to report on Tikhon, but Senyavin appears that Turkey has declared war on Russia. 1788 year. The fleeing half of the Turkish fleet, defeated by the Ushakovs, and the Sevastopol squadron, which first went into battle, meet near the island of Fyodonizy. Turks have a clear advantage in the force's 17 battleships against 2 Russian. However, the commander of the avant-garde, the battleships St. Paul, the frigates Berislav and Strela, the brigadier Ushakov is sure he will be able to achieve victory. He convinces the commander of the squadron Voinovich to allow him to act at his own discretion. The rear admiral permits and departs for the flagship. To Senyavin's request to allow him to stay on the ship, Ushakov refuses. Before the battle, Tikhon confesses Ushakov that he fought Pugachev and is a runaway convict. But Ushakov closes his eyes and orders him to take his post. The avant-garde breaks away from the Corps battalion and begins a maneuver to reach the head of the Turkish line. Turks open fire, but erratic and with inefficient distance. Ushakov forbids shooting back until the ships converge for a minimum distance. Turkish Kapudan Pasha orders to prepare for boarding. However, converging Russian ships open a shattering fire on the Turkish flagman. As a result of the maneuver of the frigates, the Turkish flagship is under fire from both sides. Voinovich, meanwhile, is only praying to leave the Turks without a shame. Senyavin informs him of Ushakov's daring maneuver. Despite the fact that Voinovich approves the maneuver with the strength of the result achieved, he himself prefers to stick to linear tactics. Sends Senyavin and begins to pray for Ushakov's success. Senyavin arrives in the bid with a report for Potemkin, who, however, broke the spurt of the spleen. Using this, Mordovtsev tries to put him a denunciation of Ushakov. Allegedly he dissolves about Potemkin, discrediting rumors. Potemkin is indifferent to the accusations of abuse of position, but the accusation of envy for the glory of Count Suvorov infuriates him. However, Senyavin again involuntarily saves Ushakov, reporting to Potemkin about the success of Fyodonizy, which makes him forgive all the charges, stating that he needs a naval commander, not sabers and fiscals. Instead of denouncing him, he makes Mordovtsev write an order to confer Ushakov the title of Rear Admiral and appoint him commander of the Sevastopol squadron. Voinovich. He appoints the new chief of the Black Sea Admiralty Board, and Mordovtsev sends a long vacation, allegedly due to illness. Ushakov, taking command of the squadron, asks Voinovich permission to apply one more innovation reserve. Voinovich refuses, but declares that the correct decision will be to turn to Potemkin. Ushakov, on Voinovich's advice, declares to Potemkin that he came up with this idea, allegedly following his instructions. Potemkin understands that the idea belongs precisely to Ushakov and asks why he did this after all. The creator of this idea is proclaimed by Potemkin, not by him. Ushakov responds that he needs not glory, but the opportunity to beat the baking sheet 1790 year. In the Battle of Tender, Ushakov defeated the Turkish fleet and seized the ship Meleki Bari. Those British Royal Navy officers who were on Turkish ships as observers report to the Admiralty about the tactics of Ushakov. Young officers Edward Foote and Horatio Nelson analyze the battle at Tender. Foote, like most British officers, sees Ushakov's violation of the rules only barbarity and savagery. But Nelson unravels in the barbarity innovative sea tactics. However, the intervening admiral reminds Nelson, in case he ever commands the squadron, about the fate of Admiral Byng, who was shot for violating the regulations of the Admiralty. The Turkish Sultan and his associates are discussing the situation. The Turkish fleet is defeated. Despite the vows of advisers and the promises of the British, the Sultan asks his advisers what to expect next. Is it not that Ushak Pasha will open fire from the Bosporus in his palace? But the Admiral Sayyid Ali, who came from Algeria, reassures the Sultan. New ships arrived from the Mediterranean Sea faster and more powerful than Russians. In the Bay of Kaliakria, you cannot see water from many ships. Sayyid Ali swears to the Sultan to bring Ushakov in a cage. Despite the confidence of his officers, Ushakov is seriously preparing for the upcoming battle. 1791. In the Battle of Kaliakria, having passed under the fire of coastal batteries, the squadron in the marching order of 3 columns collapses into the Turkish fleet. During the battle, Ushakov's flagship draws close to the flagship of Sayyid Ali. Ushakov notices the Turkish admiral and, knowing about the oath, shouts to him, "Hey! Sayyid Ali is a slacker. I'll wean you. You son of a bitch." Make promises to the Sultan. The battle lasts until late at night and ends with the defeat of the Turkish fleet. Soon the war is over. 1792. However, after the death of Potemkin, Mordovtsev again becomes head of the Black Sea Admiralty Board. The Count is determined to bring his own orders to the fleet. The officer has a voice. The boatswain has a pipe. A sailor is only a subject for the execution of commands. Ushakov, without entering into a dispute, before his eyes embraces his sailor Havrin and retires to engage in a peaceful matter to complete the port of Sevastopol. The population of Sevastopol welcomes him as a hero.